Sometimes a question does more than ask us to look for evidence. It tells us what kind of evidence to look for. You're scrolling through social media and notice a video titled How Modern Banks Enslaved Society. You may not even agree with it. The wording may feel too strong. It may sound ideological, but you may also think there might be something real here. Even before the video starts, the question has already directed attention. Your mind begins to answer it. Debt, credit, the difficulty of living without access to financial systems. The mind starts gathering mechanisms. It starts looking for the how. The title did not first ask whether society has been enslaved or in what sense that word applies. It asked how it happened. That matters because once a question asks how did this happen, the mind is already inside a certain frame. The claim has been moved into the background. The mechanism has been moved into the foreground. Before the claim has been tested, the mind is already helping it become more detailed. A question does not only request information, it selects a path. A how question asks for a process. A who is responsible question asks for an agent. Different questions do not just collect different answers, they train attention in different directions. And because this happens so quickly, we often experience the answer as if it came only from the evidence, when part of it came from the question. This does not mean the question is automatically wrong. A loaded question can point towards something real. Modern banking may create dependency. Debt can constrain people. A person can be formally free while still having limited practical room to move. The topic may be valid. The issue is that the question may have already directed us toward one version of it. If the question is how have banks enslaved society, the mind searches for evidence of enslavement. If the question becomes how do banks support modern society, the mind starts looking for what banking makes possible. If the question then turns into how do banks both enable and constrain modern life, the mind is placed inside a different task again. The object has not changed, the question has. And once the question changes, what we notice changes too. This is why precision begins with noticing the assumptions built into the question. A person can reason carefully inside an untested frame. They can produce detailed arguments, historical examples, economic mechanisms, and convincing stories. But if the frame itself has not been inspected, careful reasoning may end up supporting a premise that was never tested. The mind can do high quality work inside an unexamined frame. This happens in everyday life too. Someone says, why are you always so dismissive? The person receiving that question may start explaining why they sounded dismissive. Maybe they were tired. Maybe they did not mean it in that way. But the question has already done something. It has framed the person as always dismissive. The cleaner first question might be, are we talking about this moment or a larger pattern? The difference matters because why are you always so dismissive does not merely ask for an explanation. It imports a character claim. It turns a moment into a pattern. Then it turns that pattern into a trait. And then it asks the person to explain themselves from inside that trait. That is the structural effect of question framing. It can make a conclusion feel like the starting point. This is also why some conversations feel difficult even when no direct argument has been made yet. You are not only responding to words, you are responding to the position the words place you in. If someone asks, when did you stop caring? The question assumes that care was present before, that it stopped later, and that the task now is to locate when that change occurred. If you answer directly, you may already have accepted the frame. The first move is usually internal. Before responding, notice what the question has already assumed. And if that needs to be said out loud, it does not have to sound abstract. It can be simple. Are we talking about this moment or a larger pattern? Or can we separate what happened from what we are concluding from it? That kind of response changes the object of attention. It moves attention from the answer to the frame. And sometimes the frame is the main object. This is where the claim has to be untangled. And untangling here means separating the parts of a claim before judging the whole thing. Take the sentence, modern banks enslaved society. It contains more than one claim. Part of it is descriptive. People depend on banks. Part of it is causal. Banks help create or intensify that dependency. Part of it is evaluative. This dependency is being treated as unjust or degrading. And part of it depends on the word enslaved, being appropriate in some sense. These layers are fused into one sentence. And when layers are tangled like that, disagreement becomes harder to locate. What looks like one disagreement may actually contain several. Until we know which layer matters most, we may address the wrong part of the claim. If someone is making a moral complaint, a purely factual correction may miss what they are trying to express. If someone is making a causal claim, agreement with the concern may not be enough. This does not mean every layer is equally valid. It means the layers need to be separated before they can be judged. That is what untangling means. Not making the claim softer for the sake of softness, not removing emotion from the sentence, separating the parts so each one can be inspected. What is happening, what caused it, what would make the claim weaker. Only after that can the claim be rebuilt in a cleaner form. Maybe the refined version becomes modern financial systems create deep practical dependency through debt, credit access, payment infrastructure, and housing markets. In some cases, that dependency can meaningfully restrict freedom. That is less forceful than banks have enslaved society. It is also easier to test. Precision may reduce rhetorical force because the claim is no longer carrying more than it can justify. Different questions also serve different needs. Some help us settle or confirm what we already suspect. Others test whether a claim deserves to stand. None of these are automatically wrong, but when the aim is understanding, the frame has to be inspected. Otherwise, the mind may mistake fluency for accuracy. You may think, I can answer this, and never ask, should this have been the question? Answering a question is not the same as testing its frame. In the dismissive example, explaining yourself answers from inside the frame. Asking whether this is one moment or a larger pattern tests whether the frame has been established. Those are different tasks. And this distinction is especially important when a question feels compelling. A question with an obvious flaw is usually easier to notice. A question that produces interesting answers can be harder to inspect when its frame is distorted. This creates a loop. A question can create a search, the search can produce examples, the examples can create confidence, and the confidence can hide the fact that the original frame was just never independently justified. This is how a person can become more convinced while doing what feels like reasoning. They are making connections, they are gathering examples, they are building explanations, but they may not be testing the frame that started the inquiry. A precise inquiry does not only ask better questions, it notices what the question is doing. Is it asking us to explain something that has not yet been established? Is it asking us to accept a label before the evidence has been separated? And then, more importantly, what question should come before this one? Before how did the banks enslave society, we may need in what ways are people dependent on financial systems? Before why are you always so dismissive, we may need what happened in this specific exchange. The prior question often changes everything. It does not always remove the concern. Sometimes it makes the concern stronger. A cleaner question may reveal that the original worry was valid, but poorly phrased. Sometimes banks do create coercive dependency. Sometimes a person really is dismissive. Sometimes the pattern is serious. Precision does not remove emotion or seriousness, it gives them a clearer object. A useful practice is to pause when a question gives you a strong immediate direction. When your mind instantly knows what examples to gather, ask, what would I be unable to see from here? Every question makes some parts of the situation more visible and leaves other less visible. The question, how did this harm me, may reveal harm. The question, what did I contribute, may reveal agency. Neither captures the whole situation alone. The problem begins when one angle is treated as the whole object. This is why untangling is not just reasoning harder, it is changing the order of attention. Object first, question second, answer later. So when a question arises with a conclusion already inside it, the task is not to reject it automatically. The task is often to pause before answering. What has this question already asked me to accept? What has it made harder to see? And sometimes an answer feels natural not because it has been established, but because the question made the answer harder to see.